All right, let's dive into this white paper. Making transformation actionable. It's a dense one, but
Yeah.
it's packed with insights on how to make change happen in companies. Not just get stuck in the initiative graveyard.
It is fascinating. You know how often companies announce these big transformative initiatives with fanfare
Yeah,
and then crickets?
exactly. And I think this white paper hits the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's all about using that insider knowledge of consulting frameworks, but applying them strategically from within.
It is almost like turning the tables, isn't it? Taking those classic consulting models, Prosho 80 Care, Cotter's 8 Steps, McKinsey 7S, and using them to empower internal change agents.
I'm curious, though, you've seen these frameworks play out in real companies.
Hmm.
What are some of the pitfalls people should watch out for? Because honestly, sometimes these things can feel a bit one size fits all, and we all know how unique each company culture can be.
That's such a good point. You can't just take a framework off the shelf and expect it to work perfectly. One of the biggest mistakes I see is when people treat these models as rigid checklists instead of adaptable tools. For example, let's take Cotter's 8 Steps. It emphasizes building urgency. But I've seen companies try to manufacture urgency in a way that actually backfires. It creates fear and resistance instead of genuine buy-in.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that happening.
Mm.
So it's more about understanding the spirit of the framework, the underlying principles, and then tailoring it to your specific context.
Absolutely. And that's where this white paper really shines. It gives you the guidance to make those frameworks work for you, not against you. For instance, it digs deep into stakeholder engagement.
Okay, stakeholder engagement. It's one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot. But what does it actually look like in practice? Especially when you're leading transformation from within.
Think about it this way. You're not just trying to convince the CEO or the board. You're trying to create buy-in at all levels of the company. This white paper even talks about using the Net Promoter Score, NPS, internally, which is super interesting.
Wait, NPS for employees, that's usually used for customer satisfaction, right?
Exactly. But this white paper challenges that assumption.
Yeah.
It argues that your employees are essentially your internal customers. You want them to be advocates for the change, not just passively going along with it.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. And I guess that ties back to what you were saying about understanding the company culture. You need to know what motivates your people, what their concerns are,
Yeah,
and how to address them effectively.
exactly. It's about understanding their individual journeys through the change. Which brings us back to another framework, the Prosi 80 CAR model.
Okay, 80 CAR.
Yeah.
I've heard of it, but honestly, it's one of those acronyms that sometimes makes my eyes glaze over.
Right.
What's the real takeaway here for our listeners?
It's actually a powerful tool if you apply it thoughtfully. It breaks down individual change into 5 stages: awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement.
So let's say I'm leading a change initiative in my company. How could I actually use ADKR to make it more successful?
Think about it like this. For each stage, you need a targeted strategy. For awareness, you need to make sure people understand why this change is happening and what it means for them. For desire, you need to create buy-in and address any concerns they might have.
So it's about addressing the human element at each step, not just assuming people will automatically jump on board.
Right? Then you have knowledge providing the training and resources they need to understand the new way of doing things. Then ability, making sure they have the skills and support to actually implement the change.
And then reinforcement, making sure those new behaviors stick. I can see how this framework would be incredibly helpful for planning and implementation.
Absolutely. And the white paper goes even deeper, suggesting we use it to anticipate potential roadblocks. For example, if you know that certain teams lack the desire stage, you can proactively address their concerns, maybe even involve them in the design process.
Okay, now that's actionable advice. This is where it gets really interesting. So we've talked about Cotter and 80 CAR. What about the third framework? You mentioned McKinsey's 7S. That one always sounds a bit intimidating to me.
I know. It can seem overwhelming at first, but think of it as a way to make sure your entire company is aligned for transformation. It's about looking at your strategy, structure, systems, shared values, skills, style, and staff.
Okay, we're getting into the alphabet soup of consulting jargon here. Break it down for me. How can I actually use this in my work?
Let's say you're trying to implement a new technology platform. You might have great strategy and the right systems in place, but if your organizational structure doesn't support the new workflow, or if your staff doesn't have the right skills, the whole thing could fall apart.
So it's like making sure all the gears are meshing together properly. If one gear is out of alignment, the whole machine can grind to a halt.
That's a great analogy. And the white paper actually uses a similar metaphor, talking about how transformation needs to be a holistic endeavor. It can't just be about changing processes, it needs to be about aligning your entire organization around a shared vision.
All right, that's a great overview of these three frameworks. And what I appreciate about this white paper is that it doesn't just present them in a vacuum. It talks about how to use them strategically, how to tailor them to your specific situation, and how to avoid common pitfalls.
Exactly. It's about taking the best of these models and making them work for you, not the other way around. And that's really empowering.
So we've covered these core frameworks. Where do we go from here? What's the next step in making transformation truly actionable?
Well, before jumping into execution, there's a piece we often miss, and that's where this white paper gets really insightful. It dives into the world of compliance mapping.
Compliance. Okay, I have to admit that doesn't sound as exciting as some of the other topics we've covered.
I know it can seem dry at first, but trust me, this is where it gets fascinating. Think of it this way. You're about to embark on this big transformation journey. You've got your stakeholders on board, your frameworks in place, and you're feeling energized.
Right, I'm picturing that ready to conquer the world feeling.
Exactly. But then you hit a snag. Maybe it's a security policy you didn't consider, or a financial regulation that throws a wrench in your plans.
Ugh, I can feel the momentum screeching to a halt already.
And that's exactly what compliance mapping is designed to prevent. It's about creating a single source of truth for all your company's policies, from security to HR to finance.
Okay, I'm starting to see the value here. It's like doing your due diligence before you start making big changes so you don't run into roadblocks later.
That's it. It's about proactively identifying potential conflicts between your transformation goals and existing rules. The white paper even suggests using technology to create a searchable database of all these policies, which can save you a ton of time and headaches.
So instead of digging through mountains of paperwork, you could just type in a keyword and see how it relates to the change you're making.
Exactly. And this can be especially helpful when you're dealing with complex transformations that touch on multiple departments and functions.
Now that we've laid the groundwork with framework, stakeholder engagement, and compliance mapping, I'm eager to get into the actual planning stage. Where does this white paper take us next?
It emphasizes something called actionable planning, which is a refreshing take on traditional project management.
Actionable planning. What does that actually mean? I'm picturing Gantt charts and spreadsheets already.
Those have their place. But the white paper actually cautions against getting bogged down in too much detail too early on.
Wait, really? I thought meticulous planning was the key to success.
To a point. But the problem with overly detailed plans is that they can become rigid and inflexible. Transformation is a dynamic process. Things change, priorities shift, and you need to be able to adapt.
Okay, I'm starting to see the wisdom in that. So what's the alternative? How do you plan for something as complex as transformation without getting lost in the weeds?
Actionable planning focuses on breaking down those big, ambitious goals into smaller, achievable tasks. It's about creating clear communication plans, identifying those quick wins that build momentum, and having a process for constant evaluation and adjustment.
So it's less about having a fixed roadmap and more about having a compass and being willing to adjust your course as you go.
That's a great analogy. It's about being strategic and intentional, but also flexible and adaptable.
That resonates with me. I think sometimes we can get so fixated on the plan that we forget to be responsive to the real-time feedback we're getting.
Exactly. And this is where the white paper brings in another element that's become increasingly relevant in recent years: agile methodology.
Oh, agile. Another one of those buzzwords that seems to be everywhere these days. But how does it actually apply to transformation, especially when we're talking about large-scale change?
Think about those short, iterative sprints that are a hallmark of Agile. Instead of trying to plan everything out in advance, you break down the work into smaller chunks, get feedback quickly, and make adjustments as you go.
So it's like a constant cycle of planning, doing, checking, and adjusting.
Exactly. And this can be incredibly valuable in the context of transformation, where there's so much uncertainty and complexity.
Okay, I'm starting to see how Agile can help you stay nimble and responsive in the face of change. But let's not forget about the human element. All this talk about frameworks, compliance, and planning can feel a bit cold and impersonal.
You're so right. And that's why this white paper dedicates a significant portion to the softer side of transformation culture and training.
Okay, culture and training. Two topics that are near and dear to my heart. Tell me more.
The white paper stresses that successful transformation isn't just about changing processes and systems, it's about changing mindsets.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
You can have the best strategy in the world, but if your people aren't on board, or don't have the skills to execute it, you're going to hit a wall.
Right. The white paper talks about the importance of creating a culture that embraces change, where failure is seen as a learning opportunity, not a punishment.
Easier said than done, though, right? How do you actually create that kind of culture? It's not like you can just flip a switch and suddenly everyone's comfortable with taking risks
Yeah.
and embracing new ways of doing things.
It's definitely a journey, not a destination, but the white paper suggests a few key things. First, it starts at the top. Leaders need to model that behavior, be transparent about challenges, and celebrate those who are willing to experiment and learn.
So it's about leading by example, not just preaching from on high.
Exactly. And it's about creating psychological safety. People need to feel like they can speak up, share their ideas, and make mistakes without fear of reprisal.
Psychological safety. That's a term I hear a lot these days, especially in the context of high-performing teams. It's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable being vulnerable and taking risks.
Exactly. And the white paper actually connects this concept of psychological safety to the training aspect of transformation. It's not just about providing people with the technical skills they need, it's about fostering a mindset of continuous learning and growth.
So it's not just about checking the box with some generic training program. It's about creating a culture where people are constantly learning, adapting, and evolving.
Right. And the white paper suggests some really interesting ways to do that, like incorporating AI into education, using a mix of learning styles, and even gamifying the training process.
Okay, now that sounds fun. I'm picturing those escape room style training sessions that are all the rage these days.
Exactly. It's about making learning engaging and relevant, not just a chore that people have to endure. And the white paper even suggests using AI to personalize training paths, which is fascinating.
AI and education. That's something I'm really interested in. How do you see that playing out in the future of transformation?
I think it has the potential to be truly transformative. Imagine a world where AI can assess your individual skills, identify knowledge gaps, and create a personalized learning plan that's tailored to your specific needs.
That sounds incredible. It's like having a virtual tutor that's available to you 24/7.
Exactly. And it could help to democratize access to learning and make it more affordable and accessible to everyone.
Okay, I'm getting excited about the possibilities here.
Yep.
So we've talked about culture and training.
Yeah.
What else does the white paper highlight when it comes to the human side of transformation?
One of the key points it emphasizes is that transformation isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process of continuous improvement.
Continuous improvement. Another one of those buzzwords that can feel a bit elusive. What does it actually look like in the context of transformation?
It's about embedding change into the very fabric of your company culture. It's about creating a mindset of always looking for ways to do things better, to be more efficient, more innovative, and more customer-centric.
So it's not just about reaching the finish line of a transformation project. It's about keeping the momentum going and constantly striving to be better.
Exactly. And the white paper suggests a few key elements of continuous improvement that are particularly relevant to transformation.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What are those elements?
Well, first and foremost, it's about creating a culture of feedback. Not just top-down feedback, but two-way communication where everyone feels comfortable sharing their ideas and concerns, host, speaker. So it's about moving beyond those annual employee surveys and actually creating a dialogue where people feel heard and their opinions matter.
Exactly. And the white paper talks about using a variety of feedback mechanisms, both formal and informal. Think regular check-ins, dedicated feedback sessions, even digital tools that allow people to share their thoughts in real time.
Okay, that's starting to paint a picture of a truly feedback-driven culture. But it's not just about gathering feedback, is it? You need to actually do something with it. You're absolutely right. The white paper emphasizes that feedback is only valuable if it's acted upon. It needs to be used to make adjustments, to improve processes, and to make the transformation more effective.
So it's about closing the loop, gathering feedback, analyzing it, and then making changes based on what you've learned.
Exactly. And this is where those frameworks we talked about earlier can come back into play.
Oh, right. The 80-care model, Kotter's 8 steps, McKinsey's 7S. How do those fit into continuous improvement? I thought they were more about the initial transformation phase.
They can be incredibly helpful for guiding continuous improvement as well. For instance, think about the 80-care model. You can use it to make sure everyone understands why continuous improvement is important, desires to be a part of it, and has the knowledge and ability to contribute.
Okay, so it's like reinforcing those initial stages of change so they become ingrained in how people work, even after the formal transformation project is complete.
Exactly. And Kotter's 8 steps can be used to maintain a sense of urgency, keep communication flowing, and make sure those improvements are embedded in the culture.
I can see how that would be helpful for preventing complacency and making sure people don't just slip back into old habits.
Right. And McKinsey 7S can be used to make sure all the pieces are still fitting together. As you make improvements, you need to ensure that your strategy, structure, systems, and skills are all aligned.
So it's like making sure the car is still running smoothly after you've done all the engine work.
Exactly. It's about taking a holistic view of continuous improvement and making sure that all the elements of your organization are working together to support it. And the white paper also talks about the importance of using data to drive continuous improvement.
Okay, data. I know you're a big proponent of data-driven decision-making.
Mhm.
Tell me more about how data can be used to fuel continuous improvement.
It's about using data to understand what's working, what's not, and where you can make the biggest impact. It's about tracking your key performance indicators, KPIs.
APIs, right?
Hmm.
Those are the metrics that tell you if you're on track to achieve your goals. But how do you choose the right KPIs for continuous improvement, especially in the context of transformation?
That's a great question. The white paper emphasizes that your KPIs need to be aligned with your overall transformation goals. They need to be measurable, relevant, and actionable. And they need to be reviewed and adjusted regularly as your business evolves.
So it's not about just picking a bunch of metrics and hoping for the best. It's about being thoughtful and intentional about which metrics you track and how you use them to drive improvement.
Exactly. And the white paper suggests using a mix of quantitative and qualitative data. It's not just about the numbers, it's also about understanding the why behind the numbers.
So it's about getting the full picture, both the objective data and the subjective insights.
Exactly. And the white paper suggests using tools like customer feedback surveys, employee engagement surveys, and even social media monitoring to get a more holistic view of how your transformation is impacting your stakeholders.
That makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Data can be incredibly powerful when it's used strategically. But let's not forget that data is just a tool. It's the people who ultimately drive continuous improvement.
You're absolutely right. And the white paper goes into detail about the importance of process optimization, which is all about making your day-to-day operations more efficient and effective.
Process optimization. Sounds like we're getting into the nitty-gritty here.
We are. Continuous improvement isn't just about big sweeping changes. It's also about constantly looking for ways to make your existing processes better. And the white paper digs into some really interesting tools for doing that, like lean methodologies and business process reengineering.
Okay, I'm familiar with those terms, but I'm always eager to learn more. What's the essence of lean methodology, and how does it apply to continuous improvement?
Lean is all about eliminating waste and maximizing value for the customer. It originated in manufacturing, but it's been successfully applied to all sorts of industries, including healthcare software development and even government.
So it's about streamlining workflows, eliminating bottlenecks, and making sure that every step in a process adds value.
Exactly. And the white paper goes into some of the specific techniques of lean, like value stream mapping, which helps you visualize your processes and identify areas where you can eliminate waste and improve flow.
I can see how that would be helpful, especially for complex processes that involve multiple departments or teams.
It can be a real game changer.
Yeah.
And then there's business process reengineering, which is a bit more radical.
Okay, so if lean is about optimizing existing processes, business process reengineering is about starting from scratch and designing entirely new processes.
That's a great way to put it. It's about challenging assumptions and fundamentally rethinking how work gets done.
That can be a bit daunting, though, right?
Mhm.
Especially for large organizations that have been doing things a certain way for a long time.
It can be, but the white paper argues that sometimes you need to take a more radical approach to achieve truly breakthrough results.
Okay, I can see the value in that. Sometimes you need to shake things up and break free from those old patterns. But let's not forget about the people. How do you get people on board with process optimization, especially when it might involve significant changes to their roles and responsibilities?
That's a crucial point. And the white paper stresses that process optimization can't be a top-down initiative. It needs to involve the people who are actually doing the work.
So it's about collaboration and co-creation, not just dictating new processes from on high.
Exactly. And it's about providing people with the training and support they need to adapt to the new ways of working.
Okay, so it's about making sure people feel like they're part of the solution, not just victims of change.
Exactly. And the white paper suggests using tools like process mapping workshops, where people can come together, visualize the current process, identify areas for improvement, and design new ways of working together.
I love that idea. It's about empowering people to be part of the solution and giving them ownership over the process.
Right. And it's about creating a sense of shared purpose and understanding. When people are involved in the process of improvement, they're more likely to be engaged and committed to making it work.
Okay, I'm really starting to see how all these pieces fit together. We've gone from frameworks to feedback to process optimization. It's all about creating a culture of continuous improvement that's driven by data, powered by people, and focused on delivering value to the customer.
You got it. And the white paper actually suggests that AI can play a big role in process optimization as well.
Ah, AI. It seems like AI is popping up everywhere these days.
Mhm.
How do you see it impacting process optimization in the future of transformation?
I think it has the potential to automate a lot of the tasks that are currently done manually, freeing up people to focus on higher level activities.
So it's not about replacing workers, it's about augmenting human capabilities and making us more efficient.
Exactly. AI can help us analyze data, identify patterns, and make recommendations for process improvements that we might not have even thought of.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. It's like having a digital consultant on your team working 24/7 to identify opportunities for improvement.
It really is. And the white paper suggests that AI can also help us personalize processes, tailoring them to the specific needs of individual customers or employees.
So it's not just about making processes more efficient, it's about making them more effective and relevant to the people who are using them.
That's right. And I think that's where the real power of AI lies. It can help us create a more human-centered approach to process optimization.
Okay, I'm really intrigued by the potential of AI in this space.
Mm.
It's clear that continuous improvement is a multifaceted and ever-evolving process. But is there anything else the white paper covers that we need to know?
Yes, there's one more crucial aspect of transformation that often gets overlooked: compliance.
Ugh, compliance.
Oh.
Again, I thought we covered that earlier.
We touched on it in the context of planning, but compliance is an ongoing concern, especially in today's rapidly changing regulatory landscape. It's something we need to be mindful of at every stage of transformation, including continuous improvement.
Okay, I'm listening. Why is compliance so important for continuous improvement? I can see how it's relevant for the initial planning stages, but how does it factor into ongoing improvement efforts?
Because any changes you make need to comply with relevant laws, regulations, and industry standards. And those rules are constantly evolving, so you need to have systems in place to stay on top of things. Imagine you've implemented a new process that streamlines data collection, but it inadvertently violates privacy regulations. That could have serious consequences.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about checking the compliance box at the beginning of a project.
Right.
It's about making sure you stay compliant throughout the entire process of continuous improvement as you're making adjustments and implementing new ideas.
Exactly. It's about baking compliance into the DNA of your continuous improvement efforts. And the white paper offers some really practical tips for doing that.
Okay, I'm all for practical tips. What does the white paper suggest?
Well, first and foremost, it's about having a centralized source of truth for all your compliance policies. This makes it much easier to track changes, communicate updates, and ensure that everyone is on the same page.
Okay, so it's like creating a compliance hub where everyone can access the latest information and guidance.
Exactly. It's about making compliance accessible and transparent. And the white paper also suggests using technology to automate some of the tasks involved in compliance, like tracking regulatory changes and managing documentation.
Ah, technology to the rescue again. So are there specific tools for compliance management?
There are. There are software platforms that can help you stay on top of regulatory changes, automate reporting, and even conduct audits. This can free up your compliance team to focus on more strategic initiatives like providing guidance and training to other departments.
Okay, that sounds incredibly helpful. But even with technology, it still feels like compliance can be a bit of a burden. Is there any way to make it less of a chore and more integrated into the flow of continuous improvement?
Absolutely, and that's where collaboration comes in. The white paper stresses that compliance shouldn't be siloed within the compliance department. It needs to be everyone's responsibility.
Okay, so it's about shifting from a compliance as a policing function mindset to a compliance as a shared responsibility mindset.
Exactly. For example, your technology team needs to be aware of compliance requirements when they're developing new systems. Your HR team needs to consider compliance when they're creating training programs, and
Hmm.
so on.
So it's about building compliance into the culture of the organization, not just treating it as a separate function that everyone dreads.
That's the goal. And when you do that successfully, compliance becomes less of a burden and more of an enabler of continuous improvement. It becomes part of the conversation, not an afterthought.
Okay, I can see how that shift in mindset could be really powerful.
Okay.
So we've talked about continuous improvement from a lot of different angles: feedback frameworks, data process optimization training and development, and now compliance. It's clear that continuous improvement is a multifaceted process that touches on every aspect of your organization.
You've summed it up perfectly. And this white paper provides such a valuable framework for approaching it. It emphasizes the importance of having a clear vision, a detailed plan, and the right tools and resources.
And just as importantly, it emphasizes the human element. You need to have your people on board, engaged and empowered to drive continuous improvement.
That's right. It's not just about processes and systems, it's about people. It's about creating a culture where everyone feels like they're part of the solution and where continuous improvement is woven into the fabric of how you work.
I love that image of continuous improvement being woven into the fabric of how you work. It's not a separate initiative, it's part of your DNA.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this white paper so insightful. It goes beyond the mechanics of transformation and gets into the heart of what it means to create a culture of continuous learning, adaptation, and growth.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about transformation from the initial planning stages all the way through to continuous improvement. But is there anything else this white paper covers that we haven't touched on yet?
There's one final piece of the puzzle that's crucial for ensuring long-lasting transformation and continuous improvement: leadership.
Leadership. We've talked about how leaders need to be involved in every stage of transformation, from setting the vision to empowering their teams. What's different about leadership in the continuous improvement phase?
In this phase, leadership goes beyond just setting the direction and providing resources. It's about embodying the values of continuous improvement and empowering others to do the same.
Okay, so it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. Leaders need to be role models for continuous learning, embracing feedback, and constantly seeking ways to improve.
So it's not just about telling people to be innovative, it's about showing them how it's done. It's about being a living example of the change you want to see in the world, or at least in your company.
I love that you've captured the essence of it. And the white paper goes into detail about the specific behaviors that leaders need to demonstrate to foster a culture of continuous improvement.
Okay, I'm curious. What are some of those behaviors? What does it look like to be a leader who truly embodies continuous improvement?
Well, first and foremost, leaders need to be visible champions of continuous improvement. They need to talk about it, constantly celebrate successes, and recognize those who are contributing. It's about making continuous improvement a top priority, not just an afterthought or a slogan on the wall.
So it's about weaving it into the fabric of the company's culture, just like we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And leaders also need to create a safe space for experimentation. They need to encourage people to try new things, even if they fail, and foster a culture where learning from mistakes is valued.
That can be tough, though, right?
Mm.
Especially in a result-oriented business environment, failure can be seen as a negative thing. It can be hard to create a culture where people feel safe to fail.
It can be,
Well,
but it's absolutely essential for continuous improvement. If people are afraid to fail, they won't take risks, they won't experiment, and they won't innovate.
I completely agree. So leaders need to be champions. They need to create a safe space. Anything else? What other qualities are essential for leading continuous improvement effectively?
They need to be empowering. They need to give people the autonomy and resources they need to drive continuous improvement and trust them to make decisions. It's not about micromanaging or dictating solutions. It's about giving people the freedom to experiment, to learn, and to grow.
So it's about creating a culture of trust and collaboration where everyone feels like they're part of the journey and has a voice in the process.
Exactly. And leaders need to be transparent. They need to share information, openly communicate challenges honestly, and be open to feedback.
Transparency is so important. It builds trust and helps people feel like they're part of the team.
Right. And when leaders do all of these things effectively, they create an environment where continuous improvement can truly flourish. It becomes a way of life, not just another initiative.
Okay, I'm starting to see how leadership is the glue that holds everything together when it comes to continuous improvement. It's about setting the tone, creating the right culture, and empowering people to make change happen. But leadership development is an ongoing journey, isn't it? It's not just about identifying the right leaders. It's about continuously investing in their growth and development.
You're absolutely right. And the white paper actually goes even further, suggesting that leadership development should be an ongoing priority for any organization that's committed to transformation and continuous improvement.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about what the white paper suggests in terms of leadership development. What are some of the key elements?
Well, it emphasizes the importance of providing leaders with the training and coaching they need to develop the skills and mindsets that are essential for leading in a continuously evolving environment.
So it's about equipping leaders to be adaptable, resilient, and comfortable with ambiguity and change.
Exactly. It's about helping them develop the skills they need to navigate complexity, empower their teams, and drive innovation.
That makes a lot of sense. Leaders need to be equipped to handle the challenges of constant change, just like everyone else. But leadership development is not just about individual growth, is it? It's also about ensuring the long-term sustainability of the organization's leadership capacity.
You're spot on. And that's where succession planning comes in.
Succession planning. Why is that important for continuous improvement? I can see how it's important for the overall health of the organization, but how does it specifically relate to continuous improvement?
Because it ensures the sustainability of your transformation efforts. Think about it. Even the most brilliant leaders won't be around forever. People retire. They move on to new opportunities. You need to have a plan for what happens when they're gone.
Okay, that makes sense. You don't want all your hard work to go to waste just because a key leader leaves the company.
Exactly. Succession planning is about identifying and developing future leaders who can step up and carry the torch of continuous improvement when the time comes.
So it's not just about replacing people, it's about making sure you have a pipeline of talented individuals who are ready to lead the organization in the future and continue the journey of transformation.
You got it. Succession planning is about building bench strength and ensuring that the organization has the leadership it needs to sustain continuous improvement in the long term. And the white paper actually goes into some detail about how to create a robust succession planning program.
Okay, I'm really interested in this now. What are some of the key elements of a successful succession planning program? What should organizations be focusing on?
Well, it starts with identifying key leadership roles
Hmm.
and the competencies needed to be successful in those roles.
Hmm.
Then you need to assess your current talent pool and identify potential
Right.
successors.
So you're looking for people who have the right skills, experience, and potential to lead.
Exactly. And once you've identified potential successors, you need to create development plans for them. This could involve training, mentoring special projects, or even job rotation.
So you're giving them the opportunities and support they need to grow and learn and prepare for those future leadership roles.
Exactly. And it's important to regularly review and update your succession plan as your organization evolves and as people's careers progress. You want to make sure it's a living document, not something that just sits on a shelf gathering dust.
Okay, I can see how that's important.
Yeah.
So succession planning is an ongoing process, not just a one-time thing you do when someone is about to retire.
You're absolutely right. It's about continuously cultivating leadership talent and ensuring that the organization is prepared for the future. And when you do succession planning effectively, you create a sense of continuity and stability within your organization.
That's so important, especially in times of change. Knowing that there's a plan in place for the future can help reduce anxiety and uncertainty. It can create a sense of confidence and optimism.
I completely agree. And succession planning is not just about filling specific roles, it's also about building leadership capacity across the organization.
So you're creating a deeper bench of leaders who can step up and take on new challenges as they arise, not just waiting for someone to retire or leave the company.
That's right. It's about creating a culture of leadership development where everyone has the opportunity to grow and contribute at their highest level. And that's essential for sustaining continuous improvement in the long term.
Okay, I'm totally on board with succession planning now.
Yeah.
It's a crucial piece of the transformation puzzle. It's about investing in the future of the organization and ensuring that it has the leadership it needs to thrive in a constantly changing world.
Well said. And it's another example of how this white paper goes beyond just the tactical aspects of transformation and gets into the strategic elements that are essential for long-term success.
All right, I think we've truly squeezed every last drop of wisdom out of this white paper. We've talked about everything from frameworks to feedback to celebration to succession planning. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And I hope our listener is feeling inspired and equipped to embark on their own transformation journey.
Me too. But before we send our listener off to transform their organization, I want to take a moment to reflect on what we've learned and distill it down to a few key takeaways.
Sounds like a great idea. What are the most important things for our listener to remember as they embark on this journey?
Well, if I had to boil it all down to a few key points, I'd say that transformation is a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and improving. It's not about reaching the finish line, it's about embracing the process and making it a part of your company's DNA.
Absolutely. And that process requires a combination of strategic thinking, tactical execution, and a relentless focus on the human element. It's not just about processes and systems, it's about people. You need to have your people on board engaged and empowered to drive transformation.
And you need to have strong leadership at all levels, from the CEO to the frontline managers. Leaders need to set the vision, create the right culture, and empower their teams to make change happen.
I couldn't agree more. So we've got the big picture. Now let's get a little more specific. What are some of the practical tools and strategies that our listener can take away from this deep dive? What are some things they can actually do to get started?
Well, the white paper gives us a wealth of frameworks, from Prosh 80 to Cotter's 8 Steps to McKinsey's 7S. These frameworks can be really helpful for guiding your thinking and providing a structure for your transformation efforts. But remember, they're tools, not rules. Use them thoughtfully and adapt them to your specific situation.
Exactly. And the white paper also highlights the importance of using data to drive your decisions, streamline your processes, and measure your progress. It's about being data-driven, not just data-informed.
Yeah.
Use data to understand what's working, what's not, and where you can make the biggest impact.
And don't be afraid to experiment. Transformation is about trying new things, learning from your mistakes, and constantly iterating and improving.
That's right. It's about being agile and adaptable, using feedback to continuously improve, and never being afraid to challenge the status quo.
Okay, so we've got frameworks, data, agility. What else? What other key takeaways should we leave our listener with?
Communication. You need to communicate clearly and consistently throughout the entire transformation journey. Keep everyone informed, engaged, and on board with the changes.
Right, communication is key. And it's not just about sending out emails and memos. It's about creating a dialogue, listening to feedback, and making sure everyone feels heard and understood.
Exactly. And you need to create a culture of celebration where both successes and failures are recognized and learned from.
I love that idea. It's about making the journey enjoyable and celebrating the wins along the way, big or small.
It's about acknowledging the hard work and dedication of everyone involved and creating a sense of shared purpose and accomplishment.
Okay, so it's not just about working hard. It's also about having fun and acknowledging the hard work of everyone involved.
Right. And finally, it's about having a long-term vision. Transformation is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing journey. You need to be thinking about the future and making sure you have the right people, processes, and systems in place to sustain your transformation efforts over the long haul.
So it's about creating a culture of continuous improvement where transformation is woven into the fabric of the organization.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most intriguing points in the white paper, the idea of celebration. It might seem counterintuitive, but they argue that celebrating both successes and failures is crucial for sustaining momentum.
I'm curious about this. How do you celebrate failure without sending the wrong message? I mean, shouldn't we be striving to avoid mistakes?
It's not about glorifying failure, but rather recognizing that it's an inevitable part of innovation and transformation. When you create a safe space for experimentation, mistakes are bound to happen. The key is to extract the learnings from those experiences.
So it's more about celebrating the learning that comes from failure rather than the failure itself.
Precisely. Imagine a team that's tried a new approach, and it didn't quite work out as planned. Instead of pointing fingers or sweeping it under the rug, they have a post-mortem meeting where they openly discuss what went wrong, what they learned, and how they can apply those learnings to future projects.
That takes psychological safety to a whole new level.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see how celebrating those learnings, even in the face of setbacks, can foster a more resilient and innovative culture.
Exactly. It's about shifting the mindset from fear of failure to a growth mindset, where every experience, whether positive or negative, is seen as an opportunity for learning and improvement.
This reminds me of something else the white paper touched on that I found fascinating, the concept of applying the art of not giving effect to transformation leadership.
Ah, yes. That's a bold idea, isn't it?
It is. But I have to admit, I'm struggling to reconcile that idea with the traditional view of leadership, where you're supposed to care deeply about everything and everyone.
It's definitely a provocative concept, and it's not about being careless or indifferent. The white paper draws inspiration from Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck, which argues that we have a limited amount of energy and attention to give.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. It's about being strategic and selective about where you focus your energy.
Exactly. In the context of transformation, it means having the courage to say no to good ideas in order to say yes to great ones. It means not getting bogged down in the minutia and staying focused on the big picture, even when there are a million things demanding your attention.
So it's about being discerning and prioritizing ruthlessly, which can be incredibly challenging in the midst of a complex transformation where everything feels urgent and important.
It is. But it's essential for effective leadership. The white paper suggests that by being more selective about what we care about, we can actually have a greater impact on the things that truly matter.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about focusing your energy where it will have the biggest impact, not spreading yourself too thin and trying to do everything.
Exactly. And it's about having the courage to challenge the status quo, even if it means making unpopular decisions or ruffling some feathers.
So it's about being bold and decisive even when it's uncomfortable.
Yes. It's about being willing to make the tough calls and not letting fear or inertia hold you back from making the changes that are necessary to move the organization forward.
Okay, I'm really starting to see the value in this idea of strategic detachment. It's not about being apathetic or uncaring. It's about channeling your energy and attention towards the things that will truly make a difference in the long run.
Exactly. It's about leading with intention and focus.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. We've covered so much ground from the nitty-gritty of frameworks and planning to the more nuanced aspects of culture leadership and even mindset.
I agree. This white paper truly offers a holistic perspective on transformation, and I hope our listener is walking away with a wealth of practical insights and inspiration to apply in their own organization.
Me too. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you said earlier that really resonated with me. Transformation is a journey, not a destination.
Ah, yes. That's a key point to remember. It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and evolving. There's no finish line.
And that journey requires us to not only transform our organizations, but also to transform ourselves as leaders.
Beautifully said. It's about challenging our own assumptions, embracing new ways of thinking, and continuously seeking to grow and develop both personally and professionally.
So as our listener embarks on their own transformation journey, what's the one piece of advice we want to leave them with?
Be bold, be curious, and be open to the unexpected twists and turns along the way. Transformation is a journey of discovery, and the most rewarding discoveries are often the ones we least expect.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's a wrap for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.